Thank you so much for that, Emily. Our next speaker is from the Washington Fair Trade Coalition. She is the executive director. Her name is Kristen Beifu. And yeah, come on up. There you are. Thank you.
It's okay, okay, close enough. Hi everyone, it's great to be here. So I'm with the Washington Fair Trade Coalition. We're a group of 65 labor, social justice, environmental, faith, student organizations and fair trade businesses here in Washington State working for an equitable global trading policy. And we represent tens of thousands of eaters, community members, and workers who are done with the corporate takeover of our political system and the privatization of our public policies. And I know you agree with us, and that's why you're here today. So I want to say a couple things about the relationship of Monsanto and trade policy. How many people here have heard of Roundup? How's it there? How many people here have heard of Roundup Ultra? Not as many. How many here have heard of Plan Colombia? Oh, you should, because you are paying for Plan Colombia right now, where Roundup Ultra is being spread over fields throughout Colombia right now. Why? In an effort to eradicate drugs. But what does it do? It eradicates food. It devastates small family farmers throughout Colombia. Not only does it kill their food, it kills their water source. It kills their air. It hurts their respiratory systems. It creates skin diseases. And then what does Monsanto do? It lobbies for trade policies with Colombia so that they can sell their GMO seeds, which are Roundup ready. So they create the problem, and then they lobby for the solution, which is absolutely ridiculous. And we are paying for that. And so this is a way that Monsanto is spreading its power, not just throughout Colombia, but through Mexico, Central America, South America, Africa, and Asia. They are expanding their markets by hurting family farms. At the moment, Monsanto is trying to introduce GMO seeds in Mexico. GMO corn, the origin of corn. And there are farmers that are taking to the streets. Hunger strikes happened earlier this year to try to keep GMO seeds out of Mexico. And our elected officials, the same ones who take money from Monsanto for their elections, who own stock in Monsanto, agree with them and allow them to move forward on these trade agreements after decades of evidence that they cause economic destabilization and force people to migrate to the U.S. because they have no other choice. Another thing we're done with is the U.S. exporting its lack of transparency in GMO labeling in the form of trade agreements. Right now, New Zealand, Australia, Japan, and many European Union countries have mandatory labeling on GMO foods. And through our trade agreements, we're trying to challenge that. We're saying to be in a trade agreement with the U.S., our government, not we, our government, is saying to access our markets, you have to reduce your labeling requirements and make them non-mandatory. And you know, we're done with that. And actually, how many of you all have heard of the Trans-Pacific Partnership Trade Agreement? Yeah. Boo. Well, if you haven't heard about it yet, you should, because it will affect every single one of us here today as eaters, as workers, and as members of the community here in Washington State. And you know who is negotiating that trade policy? Monsanto. And 600 corporations are at the table. This involves 12 countries. It's being talked about as a super-sized NAFTA. It's now in its 18th round of negotiations. And we know farmers are not at the table negotiating this. Workers are not at the table, community members. And we know that it will expand corporations' rights to challenge labor and environmental laws because they see those as barriers to trade. Yes, corporations get to sue countries because they think their environmental laws and public health and safety laws are a barrier to their profits. And this is also what's happening inside government too. The head of the U.S. Trade Office negotiating for agriculture is a former Monsanto lobbyist. And he served in the Clinton administration, and he helped with negotiations on regional and multilateral trade negotiations. Do you remember what trade agreement came out of the Clinton administration? What? NAFTA. And do we think that was good for workers and farmers? No! I can't hear you!
And it's bad for unions.
All right. So we are faced with the Trans-Pacific Partnership, and corporations want this agreement done by the end of this year.
Obama wants it too! Obama's behind it too!
We need to challenge all aspects of government. So, right now, corporations and trade negotiators are asking for our members of Congress to give up their constitutional responsibility to regulate foreign commerce and to represent us. They are saying, we're going to negotiate this trade agreement, and we want you to have no say at all. We want you to give us fast track authority.
That's illegal!
You might think it was illegal. They had it during CAFTA, they had it during NAFTA, and this means Congress and the public would have no say whatsoever. This is not public policy making. This is not democracy. When I say fast track, you say no. Fast track! No. Fast track! No. Fast track! No. All right, so this is what you can do today, because it's important to go away knowing you are empowered and you can do something. You need to reach out to your members of Congress, representatives, senators, and say, represent we the people, not Monsanto, not Philip Morris, not Walmart, not the big pharmaceutical companies, and we need you to vote no on fast track and vote yes for workers, yes for farmers, and yes for eaters. Onward!